Hi, we're here with Randy Zuckerberg, and we've got a couple questions for her. Randy, first, we'd love to ask you, once a politician gets elected into office, how should they be using social media?
That's a great question, because there's been so much focus this year on leading up to the election and how to campaign, how to fundraise online, and not that many people are actually focusing on, well, what happens after that. So a few interesting things that we've seen. Actually, the White House just launched their official Facebook presence 2 weeks ago, which is a huge validation of the space. The fact that you have the White House launching a Facebook page, a Twitter account, is just really validates all the incredible work that people are doing in this space. But I also think that one of the key things is to continue speaking to this audience. The politicians and their staff, they spend so much time when campaigning building up a community, and it's really important to keep that community engaged. So a few interesting things we've seen on Facebook. Mike Bloomberg, actually, he posts a lot of videos thanking his Facebook fans that are exclusive. He'll just go on his Facebook page and say, hey, thanks to my 15,000th fan on my Facebook page. We've seen Bill Clinton actually will respond to individual people on his Facebook page. So if you go there now, there's a video response to Elizabeth Fenimore and her great question. So really interesting things to keep engaged with the community.
Awesome. We're here with lots of startups at this Startup2Startup event and lots of entrepreneurs. Do you think there's things that entrepreneurs and startups can learn from politicians on how to leverage social media?
Absolutely, and I think a key thing that was learned in this election was that there are so many ways that you can have someone spread a message for you. So traditionally, it was just people either volunteer their time or they give money, but what we saw in this election is that through social media, you can donate your status, you can share something with a friend, you can pass along a video on YouTube, you can retweet something, you can post your Facebook status, and there's just so many ways to get people engaged beyond what normally existed that everything is more powerful when it comes from your friends, and startups should really be leveraging that.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time. Hey, we're here with Chris Saka. Chris, we'd love to hear your thoughts on how politicians should use social media once they're elected into office.
Well, I think one of the challenges with elected office for so long has been these intermediary forces that are in between the politicians and the electorate. And so there's been kind of the ability for politicians to broadcast messages out. They're usually spun and polished. There's all these people in between them and the voters, and then for the voters to go ahead and get messages back to the politicians, sometimes only the moneyed folks who can afford lobbyists and afford to attend the high-money fundraisers are actually able to get their messages there. And so what's been neat about social media, particularly Twitter, Facebook, the internet, blogging generally, is that has allowed each leg of this dialogue to happen again. Now, I think what we've seen is that it's being adopted with varying levels of familiarity and varying levels of eagerness among politicians. Some continue to use Twitter and Facebook just as a broadcast mechanism. There is no real discussion or action resulting. Others, though, are innovatively using it as an input channel and saying, hey, give me some ideas, what do you think about this? Testing some opinion, floating some ideas by there, dipping in and out of the conversation a bit. And so I think those are the politicians we're going to see that continue to have the most success going forward.
Awesome, thanks. One more question for you. Do you have a favorite campaign, a campaign that leveraged social media particularly well?
Yeah, of course, the Obama campaign. I was personally invested in the Obama campaign. I was one of his tech advisors and a campaign surrogate, so I went out speaking on his behalf, and then I went and worked in the field office in Elko, Nevada. And I think what we saw in the Obama campaign was that every individual who took the initiative to get involved was empowered to all of a sudden have impact on the election. And so my parents, who hadn't been involved in politics since they were hippies back in the 60s, were 4 clicks away on the website from all of a sudden being empowered to make phone calls on behalf of Obama to battleground states. I think that was an amazing use of social media. He also would host these conference calls in which there'd be thousands and thousands of people all on the phone with Barack Obama. And it was amazing how creating that 1 degree of separation made so many people feel so deeply invested in that campaign that they worked their tails off, and he won as a result.
That's awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Right on.
Hey, we're with Steve Groh from YouTube. I got a couple questions for you, Steve. The first is, how are politicians using social media to get elected to office?
Well, in a lot of ways. I think the first thing they're doing is they're speaking directly to voters without having to go through the media. So in the past, you had to work on earned media spots, you had to buy time on TV, buy ads in newspapers, buy direct mail. Now with free social media tools, you can reach out directly to voters online without having to pay much money at all. So I think that kind of direct conversation that's taking place through social media is something that's unique. And then secondly, they're motivating supporters to do things online for them. So smart politicians actually leverage user-generated content, using sort of word of mouth and excitement online to get people interested in their campaign. And that has a higher level of credibility because it's not coming directly from politicians, but for those who believe in their campaigns.
Awesome. And how does it change once a politician gets elected into office? How are they using social media once elected?
Well, in some ways, we're just now figuring that out. I mean, I don't think many politicians in government have used social media super effectively so far. However, with Obama's victory, there's been more of a credibility wrapped around using social media in office. And the good ones are using it to make government seem more transparent and accessible. Essentially to open up the halls of government and give people a sense of what they do, every day. I don't think most people really know what their Congress people do every day in Washington. So video on YouTube we see is a great way for people to actually sort of peel back the doors in the Capitol Hill and let people see what's going on inside. And then they're also using it to try to continue to engage that political audience so that if legislation comes up, they can hit up their political audience to generate support, petitions. So the smart ones keep those lists active even when they're in office so that they can essentially use their supporters online as a tool to get things done.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, Steve.